What's up, you two-wheel troublemakers? Today I want to talk to you about motorcycle insurance because this stuff can be confusing. It is created by attorneys, and unless you have experience in the field or are an attorney yourself, when reading these contracts, it won't make much sense and you won't know what you're looking at. But most of us buy the service because Uncle Sam says this is what you need to ride on the streets legally. So before you go and pop some dank wheelies and run from Johnny Law, at least know what you're covered for and what you're not covered for, and make sure you have a free get out of jail free card or a fast enough bike to get away. Just kidding, guys. I don't condone that behavior, but do so at your discretion. So the first thing you should know is full coverage does not exist. It is not a real coverage or contract. And the reason I say this is because these contracts are full of exclusions that most of us don't read. As you can see here, there's an exclusion there at the beginning of this contract, and along with all the other mumbo jumbo that most of us don't read when we buy these things. And coming up to the next part, there's another exclusion again, along with all the other mumbo jumbo we don't ever read. And now moving on to the lower part of this 30-40 page contract, there's another exclusion right there. So as you can see, these contracts are full of exclusions, which is why I say full coverage is not a real thing. Which brings me to the next point. Most of us are used to seeing the declarations page, which is just a brief summary of your coverages, but it does not provide you the finer details as far as what you're actually covered for and what you're not covered for. But still, what does all of this mean? Your contract will actually have definitions set forth by the insurance company, so you know exactly what they are talking about. And this will be very important for you to know and understand. And I say this because to show you a quick example on here, insured will be defined. This contract here defines insured as you or a relative with respect to an accident arising out of the ownership, maintenance, or use of a motorcycle. Part B, to an accident arising out of that person's use of a covered motorcycle with the permission of you or a relative. So if you're selling your bike and you allow Joe Schmo to test ride and happens to wreck, and your insurance company says, well, sir, you were not operating that motorcycle at the time of the accident, so we are not covering you. Then you can come back to your contract and tell them, well, Mr. Insurance Person, my contract says with the permission of you, which I provided to Joe Schmo to test the bike and they happen to wreck. So why am I not being covered? This is just one small example of the many situations that can happen, and unfortunately some of us fall victim to the insurance companies because we fail to read what we purchase, and I would hate to see some of you go through a difficult experience with these insurance companies. Moving on to the next piece, comprehensive and collision coverages. These two are their own individual coverages and have their own deductibles. You can change these amounts. They do not have to be the same unless your lender has some type of specific requirement. Comprehensive will cover all other situations aside from a vehicle accident such as windstorm, tornado, hurricane, hail, fire, teenager kicking your bike over, and the most popular one, a theft. Why you guys choose not to lock your bikes is beyond me, but I hope you at least had this coverage. And if you only have liability, I would suggest to at least consider in getting the comprehensive coverage. And if you're riding dirty, then I wish you the best of luck. Moving on to collision coverage, has its own deductible, covers you in the event of a vehicle accident, whether you're at fault or the other person is at fault, but you should know it does not cover you for every situation. As the exclusions read, don't provide coverage for protection for bodily injury sustained under one of those 5 categories. Number 2, while that person is committing a felony. Number 3, while that person is attempting to elude arrest by a law enforcement official. So before you decide to drop a gear and disappear for a simple speeding ticket, you might want to consider the repercussions. Should your insurance company find out you wrecked your bike, cause injury to someone else, or damage someone else's property for eluding police, you do face the risk of not having any coverage for that situation, which means a lot and a lot and a lot of money out of pocket for you. Look at this good old gentleman here weaving through traffic, running away from the cops. Little does he know he is about to get caught. Oh, Johnny boy, wasting away such a great bike. But don't forget, do not drop the soap. If you find yourself in this situation, I hope you have a good attorney, and just know it is going to be very expensive. I'm sure many of us do not have thousands and thousands of dollars sitting in a bank somewhere simply to hand over to an attorney. Which brings us to our next discussion, the next part of the contract, the liability. In Texas, the minimum requirements are $30,000 to $60,000, $25,000. Reading this contract here, liability shown on the declarations page for liability coverage is the most we will pay regardless of the number of and the 6 categories listed there. The second portion, the amount for each person, is the most we will pay for all damages due to bodily injury to one person, which is the $30,000 minimum by the state of Texas. Number 2, each person limit, the amount shown for each accident, which is $60,000 for the accident, and the lower portion, property damage, which is $25,000 minimum. And depending on the severity of the accident, some of these numbers can be met or exceeded really quickly, leaving you with additional out-of-pocket costs. These amounts can be increased. You have to discuss this with your insurance, and of course it is going to cost a lot more money. As I've mentioned before, reading the contracts is important, as there are coverages you probably weren't aware about before. As an example here, Mexico coverage limited. Warning, read carefully. Vehicle accidents in Mexico are subject to the laws of Mexico, not the laws of the United States. Reading on towards the bottom, the coverage under this section does not apply to trips into Mexico that exceed 25 miles from the boundary of the United States of America. So you do have potential for coverage in Mexico as long as you're within those 25 miles. Why it is that specific range, I do not know. That is something the insurance companies will have to answer for you. Coverage for your covered motorcycle under this policy is extended to accidents occurring in Mexico, but only within the 25 miles. As mentioned, limited extension to coverage only applies to infrequent trips into Mexico, not exceeding 10 days at a time. Infrequent trips means less than 10 trips into Mexico during a 30-day period. So who would have known you would have coverage while you're in Mexico? And as I mentioned, it's important to read these things. Should something have happened while you're in a trip down in Mexico, you would have coverage, but we won't know these things unless we read them. So again, guys, take the time to understand and read your contract so you don't find yourself in some type of difficult situation or uncertain situation, or fighting the insurance companies for coverage that is truly owed to you. Now, in the event of a vehicle accident and you end up filing a claim on your insurance policy, this phase in itself can be very much a hassle, and I will mention it is going to be very important that you have some type of documentation, proof of your equipment, or showing that the equipment is damaged during the accident, or some type of proof of the value of such items. Should you not have any information or documentation for any of those values or equipment that you've had, the insurance company does have the discretion to give you pricing based off their insurance database. For example, if we take a motorcycle jacket, we know these things can cost hundreds of dollars depending on the brand name and type of inserts that it has for the protective padding. The insurance company may not utilize such information and give you standard or regular pricing for what a regular jacket at the store might cost, leaving you with tons of money out of pocket to replace your items. So make sure you keep track or records of your receipts, electronic copies, photographs, selfies, anything that's going to help you fight your case against the insurance companies to make it easier during the claims process, as during this part of the process it is going to be what you can prove to them, and what you're stating is what you had and what it's worth. So the next phase from that would be the claims process, which is an entirely different world of its own, and it can be a hassle. I would love to give you guys some insider tips and tricks. Unfortunately, we are out of time for today. So for the time being, do me a favor, you have any questions or anything in particular that you want to know, drop it down in the comments below. Hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.